Right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptive podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by Shaun. Shaun, welcome to the show. Great to have you on, my friend.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much, Simon.
Yeah. So could you introduce yourself to the audience, please, Shaun?
Sure. So, hi, my name is Shaun Doyle, and I work at an adoption agency called Adoption Star, but I was also a client here. My husband and I we were clients and adopted our son, Jackson, 6 years ago. And I loved it so much that I decided I wanted to be a part of it every day. And now I'm here every day. And I'm the intake manager. So I speak to people who are just learning about adoption, and before they become clients and start their journey, they talk to me. And I have another son too, Frankie, and Frankie and Jackson have the same birth mom.
Yeah. Wow. This stuff comes to us, doesn't it? You know, the fact that, are you old enough to remember Victor Khayyam? Do you remember him? Victor
I
Khayyam.
don't.
So Victor Khayyam used to do adverts, an American guy, and used to do adverts here in the UK. And he bought this razor. I bought the razor. You know, I love the razor so much. I bought the company.
Oh, I do know. Yeah, I have heard that. Yeah, I feel the same way. You know, I loved it so much that I got bit by the adoption bug, and I didn't buy the company, but I was really lucky. I had been in my field for 20 years, working with people with developmental disabilities on different levels, and really knew that world inside and out. But I was kind of burned out from that. And I always said, if I could talk about adoption all day long, I would. And then I got a call. I mean, I sent it out to the universe for sure, but I got a call saying, would you ever consider leaving your career to come work for Adoption Star? And I think I said yes halfway through the sentence. Yes. Like, yes. Whatever it is, I'll do it. That's
brilliant. I mean, we just have great conversations on this. Like, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. We're the luckiest guys in the world because we
get to talk about growing your family and spreading love and going through this process. I think it's, once you're in the know and I think you speak the language of adoption, you really feel so connected to other adoptees or birth parents or adoptive parents. It's just an amazing thing. So yeah, I love what you do too. It's really an incredible world of its own.
Yeah. So how's it been for you and your husband raising Jackson and Frankie?
Really incredible. Our adoption story and our great fortune are not common, I've heard, but I like to tell the story just because it can happen. We weren't waiting too long for once our home study was done. We waited a very short time before we got a call from our family advocate asking if we wanted our book to be shown to Nicole, who's the boy's birth mom. And we ended up meeting her and falling in love, like immediately, like tears in our eyes, hugging. And she wanted us to be at her OBGYN appointments. And so we got to hear his heartbeat, Jackson's heartbeat, and Frankie's too. We were in the delivery room. We cut the umbilical cord for both boys. And we have an open adoption. So Nicole has been in our lives throughout the last 6 years that we've known her. So it's great. We're super open about it with both of them, even though Frankie, he's only 2, so he doesn't, he's absorbing something, but Jackson asks lots of questions about being adopted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's great, isn't it? As
you
say, you say you're very fortunate, and it's great that it's been like that,
It is. I used to come with my husband and with Jackson just to talk to the adopted parents that were doing their home study that would take our classes. We have classes that they take, and we talked about open adoption. And one time it was me and Eric, my husband, Jackson, Nicole, and Nicole's mom, Lori, who was also a very important part of our story. And the group got to hear us all talk. It got very emotional, and it was just really nice to be able to present to the group, and to and that's kind of what got me thinking about, like, I'd love to do this all the time if I could.
Yeah.
Oh, but the reason I tell you that is when I said that we went from being home study ready to matching with Nicole in about a month. Our family advocate Shannon was like, "So that's not a typical wait time." Like, usually it's longer, but it could happen. And since I've been working here, people have matched quickly, and some have. It's taken a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you hear this phrase, the name of this podcast, Thriving Adoptees, what comes to your mind, Shaun?
Oh, I really think of children who have their stories completely integrated, and their family of origin integrated, either in person or by just talking openly about it with their adoptive family, and having there be absolutely no secrecy, being really open about how the process occurred, and being really open about who their family of origin is, and making them a part of their daily life as much as possible, instead of hiding it. Or I hear a lot as the intake manager about how people sort of fear the birth family, or fear the family of origin, or they'll say, we'll talk about adoption when they're older, or we want a child who looks just like us, so that they don't feel like they're adopted. And being adopted is a cool thing, and it's something that when I think of thriving, I think of, they may have grief and loss or some attachment issues as they grow up, but that we'll work through them and really acknowledge them, so that they can thrive and be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you heard, I don't know if I mentioned this when we spoke last time, because you've talked about you falling in love with Nicole,
We did.
Jackson and Frankie's birth mother, and you mentioned you just mentioned the word fear. Have you ever heard the word, this phrase, something like fear is the absence of love? You heard that?
Well, yes, I have. I used to, way back when, be a huge Marianne Williamson fan. And I read this book that she wrote, which I really dug at the time, A Return to Love. And I think the whole thing was that, if it's not love, it's fear, and the fear is the absence of love. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah.
And it does apply here for sure.
Yeah. How does it apply? How do you see it?
So I think that so when I say fear, I mean fear of the adoptive parent, fear of the birth parent. I feel like people are afraid to fall in love with their child's birth family, and sort of resist that, because it's a scary idea for a lot of people that they may have to share some parenting, even though that the birth parent isn't co-parenting, that they may, want to suggest a name or a middle name, or may have, things that they want to add to, and letting in another party when you really feel like it's just, I'm the parent, I think is scary for people. And so they sort of build a barrier to not fall in love with for whatever reason, the birth parent. But I think when people take our classes and learn and hear people, like when we all came to talk and realize that it can be, and it has not been smooth with Nicole the whole time, but we've made ourselves, I think you have to make yourselves vulnerable to having your feelings and not being closed off. And some people really want, a closed adoption because of that fear.
Yeah. Have you been scared during this?
No. before we met Nicole, we had a stereotype of what well, before we came to the agency, we had a stereotype of what we thought a birth mom was, like her demographics, her age. And then in our classes, a birth mom came to speak who made an adoption plan for her child, I think at the time, maybe 6 years before. And now she's an attorney. She's on the board of Adoption Star. She's still on the board. I think she's the president. And it sort of like made us think out of our kind of closed-minded idea of what a birth mom was. And then, when we met Nicole, it completely shattered any mythology that we had. So I was not hesitant to give her my phone number right away. She started texting us photos like of her ultrasound. We met for lunch. We went, I had no fear, and I had no fear that she was going to change her mind either during the time that she could have revoked her signature. I really didn't, and I'm a fearful guy. I have lots of anxiety, and I thought those 30 days in New York State here would kill me. But we even saw her before the 30 days was up. I didn't tell my mother because she was really nervous about those 30 days, and we saw her probably about a week before. And, people had said, that's not a good idea. What if she sees the baby and changes her mind? I'm like, I don't believe that's going to happen. And it did not.
Yeah.
So no fear.
No. Have you been scared about being a dad?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I used to say before I was a dad, like the chances of me messing up a kid are pretty great just with my own neuroses, and there's so many opportunities to do the wrong thing. But as soon as we started parenting, I really felt like I had a handle on it, and that, I could navigate most things. So I think the biggest fear about being a parent is just like the amount of love you put into these relationships with your children, and your worry about anything bad happening to them. I think that's when I ruminate, it's not over like, I hope I said that right. It's over, like them being sick or having some trauma, and trying to protect them from as much of that as possible, even though, they need to learn how to be resilient. But yeah, I'm always a little nervous about being a dad.
Yeah. My mum I'm 54, right? And my mum still tells me to drive carefully.
My mom does too. Call me when you get home. Please be careful. Yeah. Even though like I'm talking to her on my Bluetooth, she's like, I don't know how you can pay attention to the road and talk to me. I'm going to hang up.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know I'll worry throughout. And I'm a bit of an older dad. I'm 50 with a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I have my health to think about, and my longevity too, because I want to be around until they are driving, and I can tell them to be careful every time I talk to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what advice or insights, or what could you share with adopted parents who are listening who may be scared of like the birth mother or birth parents in the future?
Oh, that's a great question. So not every situation is like ours, and you have to, be a little bit discerning when you're going through the matching process and placement. But my best friend Alicia's mom always used to tell us this before we would go out to the clubs. She would say, be safe, be smart, use your head, guard your heart. That was really good. I'll say that again. Be safe, be smart, use your head, guard your heart. And I think that you want to be realistic and be smart about things. The chances of a birth parent being a crazed killer that's going to be looking through your window in the holidays is probably about zero. And any any type of hiccup that you have with them is usually you've got the support of an agency or an attorney behind you to help you with. But I think that the guard your heart part is was advice that I got from our mentor, who, when we met Nicole and she was deciding on, it was between us and another couple, he said, you know, I want you to be so excited. I want you to be vulnerable. I want you to be like super joyful about this, but take a little part of your heart and just guard it, because you know, if she doesn't choose you, you're going to have to feel some hurt, and that's built into adoption. And so I always tell people that, you know, that it's not for the, you know, for the faint of heart, this adoption journey. But as far as fear of whatever you're fearful of is probably, just like in anything, most likely not going to happen. And you know, the making yourself vulnerable, to put yourself in their shoes, to empathize with them, to realize what this decision means to them, and to really love them for choosing you and making this decision.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because this whole area of vulnerability, feelings, emotional intelligence, consciousness, I know whatever we want to call it, is a fascinating one, really fascinating one for me, you know. And it struck me that, you know, we live in this world where we've got to do something about our fear, right? We've got to do something about our emotion, and we live in a world that's really into strategies and hacks and all this sort of stuff, and changing mindset and and all that good stuff that I've tried. It didn't work for me really, but what happened, sound like what happened to you is like, you're not going to be you've acknowledged there's been some tricky stuff with Nicole, but you fell in love with her, so you're not going to be afraid of her.
No, never. It's interesting, because we love her, you know, we certainly understand if she, you know, needs time, or doesn't want to get together, or wants some distance. You know, she knows, I hope she knows, and we have said many times that we are always there for her. We are always, she's our family, and just like any other family member, if you disappear for a while and reappear, we'll welcome you back with open arms, and that the love doesn't change. Sure, I had a vision of what an open adoption was going to look like that sort of changed through the years, but that's on me. You know, that was my expectation, and having to adjust that. So again, I try to really put myself in her shoes. But yeah, that doesn't go away, just like any family member. You know, it's so intense to look at my boys and think like, wow, you both look so much like Nicole, and I see that there's a stubbornness there that I know she has shared, that she has and sort of grew up with, and you know, they're strong-willed like Grandma Lori, their birth grandma, and it's just amazing. And it's always so weird to think like they don't have our DNA at all, right? That whole nature versus nurture piece, but they do act just like us, a lot of the time. Being two gay men, we're very dramatic in front of them, and they have a sense of drama as well, which is great.
Yeah.
I'm
going to kind of go back to this, because I don't know whether I've made it clear or not, really. So, because people say, you know, I see this quite a lot in, because I attend trauma trainings just to see what is it that these people are talking about. You know, as we said last time, because I do say this a lot, you know, we need to be we seem to be trauma obsessed.
Oh yeah.
But I believe we should be hope obsessed, trauma informed, but hope obsessed. But you know, a lot of people will say, you know, on trauma trainings, love isn't enough, right? Well, you know, we've talked about love as the absence of fear, and I'd forgotten it came from Marianne Williamson. So I must have read that book years ago, perhaps like yourself, or maybe just heard a reference. But I guess I'm trying to draw the very simple counterpoint between love and strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So love may not be enough, but it's a really good place to start. You know, like,
Yeah, no,
am I making sense? I don't know.
yeah. You know, it's funny because I've been married for 7 years, and I've been with Eric for 16 years, and being married is hard. And I was talking to my friend Janelle about marriage and like just being married through a pandemic and being holed up together. And I actually screamed jokingly, "Love is not enough." And she's like, "Oh, that's the truth." And you know, it's hard work as well. But if that wasn't the foundation that it was all built on, then nothing else would matter afterwards. So, you know, I may not like you today, but I do love you, and that's the foundation of it. So, and I'm not speaking of my children. I'm speaking about my husband. But
I
yeah,
thought you were talking about me.
No, love is not enough between us, not yet. But no, I think it's really like your foundation has to be built on that like really solid rock, and then everything else you can figure out, even though it isn't enough. Like you always go back. And I think that, you know, that reminds me to be gentle and kind when I might want to just snap. And being a parent too, like I swear I would never snap and raise my voice, and that you got to be kidding. Like that's just it's just not, you know, like you want, like these children, you adopted these children and you wanted this, you prayed for this. So how dare you raise your voice? But it happens.
Yeah. I was the metaphor that came into my mind. Have you heard this about, you know, the fact that when we open we're in the kitchen, right? The kitchen, the light is on in the kitchen. We open the cupboard, and the light of the light rushes into the cupboard rather than the darkness from the cupboard rushing out. You heard that?
I have heard that, yeah.
And so that's love and fear for me. Those two metaphors, and the fact that, you know, when we're looking for when we're Googling like mad, how to do this to assuage our anxieties, or to deal with our fear, or to try and just calm ourselves down, or looking for an answer, we'll get more and more caught up into it because we've got this fear. So going back to it, we're only coming from two places, aren't we? We're coming from love or from fear as we go through our day, and whether that's with our partners, with our husbands, with our wives, with our kids. Am I making any sense? I don't know.
Oh, completely. Yeah, I can't believe you brought this up. We didn't talk about love and fear when we spoke last time, but like this used to really be my bag. Like I really would confront people. Well, what are you afraid of right now? Like this was really my thing. I've forgotten about how into this theory I was. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And you know, it's funny because like with my children, and you know, Frankie's so little that he, you know, our interactions are very different than with Jackson. But like Jackson had tubes put in his ears, which is like a surgery to stop ear infections. And our friend, who was the ENT, ear, nose, and throat specialist, picked him up to take him to the operating room, and he just went with her. And she says, you know, you can tell he feels very safe in this world, that you've created that. Like he's not afraid to go with me. He's that he feels safe. And I loved that she said that. It really moved me. And, I think that he knows, even if we're mad at him, that it doesn't mean we don't love him. Like last night, he just wasn't listening, and I was losing my patience, and he's like, "Daddy, are you mad at me?" I said, you know what? I said, "Yeah, I am. I am mad at you." And he went, "Aw." He's like, "How long do you think you're going to be mad at me for?" I said, "I need a little space." I said, "But not for too long." I said, "But even though I'm mad at you right now, I still love you." And he's like, "I know. I'm sorry I made you mad." And I said, "That's fine. It's fine. Just give me a little space here." And I just love that it doesn't shatter his world, that I'm like, I can be mad at him and he doesn't burst into tears. He just is like, "Ah." It's kind of a bummer, but he knows at the end of the night, we're going to be cuddled up and reading stories, and that it's so his foundation is based more on love than fear. Like, is he going to leave me? Am I, I'm always very sensitive to that whole permanency, and it never crosses their minds that we're adopted, and that, I don't know, anything that I'm always careful of, that I think doesn't even cross their mind as far as like abandonment or anything like that.
Yeah.
I overthink things, though.
Yeah. Can we have a competition about that?
Yeah, I win. No, it's just
so you talked about vulnerabilities here, and I find this a fascinating area. I found vulnerability a fascinating area, especially when it comes to kids. So me and my wife haven't got any kids, right? But I've done a lot of work with kids in elementary schools, and I found being vulnerable with them about, for example, when I was adopted. Not when I was adopted. Why am I talking about? I only told one kid actually out of those 1,600 kids I adopted, because he happened to mention that he was. But a lot of those kids had been bullied, and I kind of went first and gave, shared my story about being adopted from a sense of vulnerability, just because it seemed like the right thing to do on one occasion. And then I just thought, this has created such an open space with the kids. I'm going to do this each time. So once it was insight, and then it became a habit, or something that I repeated every time, because they really respected that. It was the foundation of empathy, like, going first. Sorry, I've got the dogs going mental in the background.
It's okay.
Slightly distracting me.
I love it.
But we haven't got any kids, and when we get onto the subject, I'm intrigued to ask parents about vulnerability, because I've seen it work like a treat with complete strangers. So how it works with our own kids, it must be huge.
Yeah, it is. I'll admit to Jackson when I'm sad. He's definitely seen both of us cry. Not a lot, but enough to know that it's okay to cry. And my dad is an amazing man, a kind and patient man, but emotionally is pretty closed off. So I never really saw him angry, but I never saw him sad. I always just saw a very even keel, which is a little unnerving now that I think about it. He didn't make himself.
Sorry, guys, just had to take a quick break there. We've got a plumber working next door, and the dog's going spare. So, sorry, back to vulnerability.
Yeah, Eric's a little more closed off than me, but I'm a pretty open book, and I definitely show my vulnerability to my sons so that they will know that it's okay to feel those things. You know, when I was just saying, my dad is kind and patient and wonderful, but I always really just saw kind of a flat line of an even keel. And I've never seen, in 50 years, I've never seen my father cry, not one time. And it might have been nice to see him be a little bit more vulnerable. I may still see it. He's 81, so we've got some time. But yeah, even to see me angry, I think is good. I really never saw my father angry either. So, and I think being vulnerable, and I think just letting yourself love so much and opening up your heart so much makes you vulnerable for such incredible hurt that could, you know, once you expose your heart like that, you know, the love for your child, my love for my children is so intense that when I ruminate, like I said, overthink things and think about, you know, if anything bad were ever to happen, it just tears me up. So I work on not borrowing trouble. That's a saying I like. Don't borrow trouble. And everything's going really well. So but that vulnerability is really important. And I do it with the clients here too. I let them know I've been in your shoes and I know what it's like to wonder if you're going to be chosen. And also, you know, during a home study, you know, there's no secrets. Like if you've been to a therapist, it's going to show up. If you've had an arrest, it's going to show up. You know, if you really anything, no stone is left unturned for in the hoops that you have to jump through to become an adoptive parent, and you've got to make yourself vulnerable for that as well.
Yeah. What about talking to your boys about, well, especially Jackson, probably Frankie too young for it, but what about talking to them about emotions?
Well, luckily, one of Jackson's favorite movies is called Inside Out. It's a Disney Pixar film. So he's pretty keen on the 5 emotions that are represented. And he'll be like, that's anger. And I'm like, what color is that guy? He's like, he's red and he breathes fire. And he's like, do you know what my favorite emotion is? And I said, no, which one? And he's like, it's joy. And I thought he would pick disgust because that's kind of funny. But so we talk a lot about emotions and different emotions. We've got a couple of really good books on, you know, more than just the emotions represented in that film. But we just let them know, like, it's okay. You've got really big feelings and you are allowed to feel them. And we'll give you some space to, you know, freak out or throw a tantrum and or feel really sad. It's okay. And but then I get to a point where I say, okay, now you got to pull yourself together because you don't want it to last forever. But we really encourage, it's okay to be mad. And I know you said that, you know, sometimes he'll say, you know, you're mean or I don't like you. And, you know, it's okay. We know that you're mad. So we definitely try and let all those feelings come out, because stuffing them and not feeling like they're okay can lead to the need for adult therapy, which I'm trying to avoid if possible.
Yeah, of course. A mentor of mine, a guy called Michael Neal, came up with this phrase, emotophobia. Have you heard of that?
I have not heard it, but I get it for sure. I understand that one.
Yeah. So I think psychologists are now starting to talk about this, which is a good thing, because you know, you don't have mental health issues. You have feelings. You know, we seem to have gone. You know, any you know, you say it's okay to have feelings, right? You want Jackson to know it's okay to have feelings. But as adults, we seem to be becoming emotophobic, like, you know, and we've got we're really concerned about consent. So, like, and there's lots of people who. So I used to worry about worrying, right? And then I'd worry about worrying, and then I'd worry about worrying, especially since I've done all this work, right? And then it just kind of like it's a vortex that starts spinning. You just go further and down, deeper down the hole. that's why I was asking you. I'm interested.
Sure. Yeah. I don't want to, there's a great book and it became a movie in the 70s called The Stepford Wives. And the Stepford wife, these women were being replaced by robots who were like the perfect wife, very subservient and obedient. And it was happening in this small town. And I always make this reference of like, we don't want to be a Stepford family. People are so concerned about how they look on Facebook or Instagram, and they kind of curate this look of look at our family, and below the surface is like probably like some deep emotion and some hurt and some tears, and it's okay to have those. But I think people try to make themselves into the Stepford kind of family where we just look perfect, and that's a thing I think with a lot of parents trying to have the perfect child and try to fit them into that mold of what they want them to become. I know that's a thing. I've had friends whose parents have done that to them, and it's a heavy burden.
Yeah.
And even to just be happy all the time, like that's not natural. I don't think. I think that they need to be sad sometimes, and even though I don't want them to have any trauma, and I want them to be as happy as possible, so I have to remind myself to let them feel whatever they're going to feel.
Yeah. Another mentor of mine, a guy called it's literally completely gone out of my head. Richard Wilkins, a guy called Richard Wilkins. He says that happiness and sadness are merely the high and low tides on a big sea called contentment.
Yeah.
I like that.
I like that too. Yeah, I think contentment and the visage of happiness are two different things, but I like, that's really good. Yeah, I was just talking about some people at our church about, like, someone said happiness is a choice, and that caused all kinds of trouble. They're like, well, what if you have a mental illness? Like, depression is real. And I'm like, well, you can choose your attitude. You can switch it. You can fake it till you make it. You can, I'm not discounting real mental health issues, but I think you can choose happiness. And people disagreed, and then someone said, well, I think contentment is even a better word. Like you can choose to be content with a situation. You might not be happy about it, but you can maybe settle into it for a while. So that's a really good quote.
Yeah. Well, the same guy talks a lot about choice, and most of the time we're not choosing, right?
Right.
So if we're feeling down, then we're not choosing, and if we're not choosing, it's not our fault, right? So we're off the hook.
Well, I think we're responsible for our attitudes. I'm guilty of saying things like, you have made me so angry, or you have hurt my feelings. And there's that whole school of thought, like, well, it's what you allow. Like somebody might say the same thing and it might not faze you at all, but you have a choice how you let that in. So I don't know. I used to do training and staff development, and coming kind of from an HR world, talking about at work, you choose your attitude, you choose who you're going to be today. And I definitely promoted that as part of the HR human resources team. And I even say it to my husband, like, there's a choice right now. You can choose to rise above this, or you can get really, really mad if it's one of the kids. So make a good choice, which enrages him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does, doesn't it? That sort of.
Right. He's like, don't analyze me. I'm like, well, I'm educating you.
Yeah. So what are the most important things you want your kids to know growing up?
I would say I would like them to know that they came to be in in acts of love. Without sharing too much of their story, I know that their birth fathers, really, there was a lot of love in the relationships that they were conceived in at the time, and that the decision to make an adoption plan was made in love, and us being chosen was a matter of just falling in love with Nicole and her mom upon first meeting. And so, like, the foundation of them coming into being is of safety and love and warmth, and that's really their foundation, honestly. I worry about worrying, like you said, but I don't know if they're going to come at me with like some typical adoptee questions, like did she not love me, or why did she give me up, or why can't I live with my mommy, and I there might be questions along the way, and I think I'll rise to the occasion. And I haven't practiced answers to these questions yet, but as Jackson gets older, and Frankie, but I just would want them to know that this all of the whole reason that they came to us was all decisions that were based in love, which is really nice.
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, it is.
I'll probably rethink that answer all day and be like, oh, I should have said, but no, that's where I'll land on that right now.
Yeah. That's about their background, I guess, or what would you want them to know about themselves?
Well, kind of what I didn't know about myself growing up, especially as a gay man, that no matter what they choose to do, or what they want to be, or what their talent, where their talents lie, that we will be behind them 100%, no matter what. I've always been really like open about like gender neutral toys, and like, well, what if they're trans? Like, I don't know, like I don't want them to feel isolated, or if they are, if they do have crushes on children of the same sex, or like I said, Eric is a musical theater buff, and so we tried to get Jackson into dance and like make him a little showbiz kid, but he really likes sports, which is devastating to my husband and I. just kidding. But yeah, so that they know that we will be there for them, and we will be there to support them no matter what, and that they're safe in their decisions. Because I never felt that way. I always thought, oh my God, if people find out I'm gay, I'm going to lose every single person in my life, which I didn't. But as a kid, that's what I thought. So I just want them to have that security, as does Eric.
Yeah. Yeah. Love and security.
Yeah, I think about that ENT surgeon saying, you could tell he feels very safe in this world. And I was like, oh man, we nailed it. This is great.
Yeah.
I love this. And I love when I see him react or non-react to my anger, which sometimes I wish he was a little bit more afraid. But it makes me happy that he doesn't crumble at the idea of me being upset or Eric being upset. I feel like resilience is something we're building. And that's important. Again, something that I felt like I had to learn much later in life.
Yeah. So resilience. I was with you in the kind of like, it's something that's built.
Yeah.
That's why I thought. And then I heard a different view where it's something that it's discovered, it's uncovered, it's revealed rather than built. So we don't think we're going to be able to handle something, and then we are able to handle something, and that shows us the resilience that we always had, but we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know we had it. So it's something that's revealed rather than strengthened or built.
Well, I like that. I have to wrap my head around that for a minute. Yeah.
Shall I give you an idiom for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. I love a good idiom.
So the one that comes to mind on this is the fact is, you know, Michelangelo is questioned about this statue, David, in some museum in Milan or wherever it is. I don't know, Florence, is it? So Michelangelo is questioned about this statue. How did you create the statue?
I think I've heard this one.
Yeah.
Oh, please go ahead.
So how did you build the statue? We didn't build the statue, but he said, well, David was always there.
I just chipped away until.
I just chipped away to reveal him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so building. Most people, like I did, and like yourself, talked about building resilience. In which case, we've got to go out and we've got to go to the resilience gym. We've got to practice our resilience, and we've got to wait until it's a matter of time. It's a matter of strategies and behaviors and strengthening the muscle and all that good stuff, which takes time, right?
Oh,
also,
sure.
We're looking for it outside us. And if resilience, for me, resilience is an inside job. And if we're looking outside for something that's inside, we're going to be looking forever.
Yeah, like the Michelangelo.
And if we see it, we can see it in a minute. We can see it, not a minute, we see it in a split second. And then it's there. We've got it.
Yeah.
So you're never going to find it if we think all things are an inside job, right? So if we're looking for it outside, we're never going to find it because it isn't outside us. And also, if we think that it's going to take time, it means that we just don't see our resilience just in the split second. Then, ding, we've got it. You said don't analyze me earlier on, so.
Oh, that was my husband saying that, not me.
Oh, right.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I remember Jackson, was laying in bed with me when he was an infant, and I fell asleep and I heard thud, and he rolled off the bed, and I was like devastated. All I could hear was that thud all day long as I was moving through my day. And I remember a bunch of people saying like, kids are resilient. Like, it is true. I think people are born, it's in there, right? And you have to put them in, like, we put both of our kids in daycare at like 6 or 8 weeks whenever they had their immunizations. And, you don't find out you're resilient until someone hurts your feelings, or until someone takes your toy, or until you're in a situation where you can sort of reveal that. So I like that we exposed both of them. And, Frankie just started daycare, and then we went into lockdown here. And then we were all stuck at home, and we needed resilience there too, to not go insane, being in the same space. But yeah, I like that a lot. I like that. I do want to take some credit for it though.
By all means. I
helped build resilient children somehow, but I like that. Because I remember, oh my gosh, I was being smart with my mom, and I said something nasty to her. And this memory just came up. I have seen my father angry at me. And it was this one time that I got mouthy with my mom, and because I'd never seen him like that before, I remember running into the room and crying for probably what felt like hours. Like, it's over between me and my dad. Like, he's mad at me. It's just over. He must not, the love is gone. I was not like I didn't know how to handle something like that. And I feel like my sons will be better at that than me, which is nice.
Yeah.
I hope.
I think as you say, kids are born resilient, and I think we learn fragility.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny, just this morning, Jackson said that he's like, my head hurts and my tummy hurts. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you seem yourself. I said, you don't have a temperature. he's like, can I stay home? And I said, no, you're fine. And then I was thinking, God, what if he really, like, I think I can tell when he's sick and not sick, but I want to believe him. But I also, I can't work from home today. And I like, do I believe him, not believe him? Like, you're fine. You're fine. Look at, like, you're playing with your brother. You don't have a fever. Like, come on, let's do this. And then the whole way to school, he didn't complain about it at all. And so I just keep looking to wait to see if the school's going to call and say, Jackson's in the nurse's office. But yeah, I definitely think that he's on to, like, if I act like this, maybe I'll get away with something and not have to go, which I personally feel like, and I told him, your daddy wrote the book on pretending to be sick to get out of going to school. So really,
you can't kid a kidder.
Yeah, you can't kid a kidder, pal. I see you playing. But anyway, yeah, he's there. He's resilient. So, yeah. And it's a short week too. But yeah, it's so many layers to it. Parenthood and parenting, and then parenting an adopted child. Like, is it how different is it? Is it not different at all, or are there things to look out for that could be extra? Pay extra attention to this. So I'm always, like we said, overthinking it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get a chance to explore that some more, I think, because when I come on, when I come on your podcast. So I'm going to put a link. So Shaun has his own podcast, and he also has a podcast that he runs for Adoption Star. So I'm going to put some links in the show notes for that.
Thank you. Yeah. I definitely want to link this to Adoption Star, and then I think we're going to have a second date. And we're gonna kind of switch it around, and you'll be a guest on my podcast. This is exciting.
Have you got any I'm just conscious of time. Have you got any closing thoughts you'd like to share, Shaun?
I would just like to say to adoptive parents, or people hoping to adopt, or people nervous about, like, you have to make yourself vulnerable enough to be part of the process. Like, you have to, like, there's a silly saying, you have to be in it to win it, which is silly, but you have to take the risk of at least, like, doing your home study and having it all out on the table, all your flaws and all your great stuff too. And then you have to make yourself vulnerable to being rejected. And I think that you don't be afraid of opening yourself. I mean, guard part of your heart for sure. But I think that there are so many people that don't do it because they're afraid of these hurts that might come along. And I think that people just need to make themselves. I talked to a woman who said, it's asking me for an emergency phone number on the registration. In what circumstances would you need to call another person about my adoption? And I'm like, well, further down the line. And she's like, well, we haven't shared this with anybody. I'm very uncomfortable putting down a second phone number. And I'm like, oh, Lord, if you're uncomfortable with a second phone number, you're really going to hate when we want to see what's in your savings account, when the state is like fingerprinting you. Like, just like let yourself go a little bit, and you got to be in it to win it. So if you're hesitating to start the journey, start now. Do something, take some action steps in researching, because it's such an amazing way to grow your family and not to be afraid.
Fantastic.
Closing words, long closing words.
Hey, Shaun, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for listening.
My pleasure. Thank you, Simon.
Speak to you very soon, and make sure you check out all the links in the show notes to Shaun's personal podcast and the podcast that he runs for.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.